All right, welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode is on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I am joined here by the host of Cannon Fire Pod, Rhett Matthew. Welcome.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm excited to talk to you. Obviously, a lot of great things going on this year again with the Bucks. Obviously, you can be found on at Redicus on Twitter, right?
Yep. Yes, sir. At Redicus on Twitter and Instagram. If you follow me, I'll
Perfect.
follow you back.
Perfect. Yeah. So I guess my first question, this Tom Brady character, he just kind of seems like he's kind of washed. I just don't know if he's gonna make the whole season, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, at 44 years old, I'm surprised he's not on a walker in between drives. Obviously this guy can't keep up with the rest of the league with the age that he's at, or
It's
so we would think.
it's so crazy. I don't know if you caught that interview with him a post game when he talked about his hand hurting.
I didn't hear the sound bite. I read a few quotes that I saw on Twitter, but I didn't see like the whole interview or the whole press conference.
Yeah, just how he talked about it hurting, and in the past he wouldn't have said anything, but now he just doesn't care.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I like that. I like that attitude in Tom Brady, and I think more than just Tampa fans like that attitude in Tom Brady, because a lot of what's been said over these past, over the past season and a half is that, man, this is not the same Tom Brady that was, operating in New England. And obviously it's a different culture, different locker room, different head coach, different coaching style. Like, it isn't the New England way anymore, or the Patriot way anymore for Tom Brady. So he is a little more open. I think he's, happier. You got to be a little happier. No state tax, better weather, prettier women. Like, come on, dude.
And so obviously with that win over the Patriots, what did you see that what meant to him, and then even to the fan base?
I think the coolest part of that entire game was just the Pats fans who were like, so conflicted at the start of the game. Like, they cheered him on when he came out of the tunnel for the first time, and then they were dead silent when he broke the passing record. They booed him. They would cheer incompletions. Like, it's just a cool feeling, because I couldn't imagine a quarterback, as a Bucks fan, I couldn't imagine a quarterback coming into your franchise, especially as, a sixth round draft pick, but your backup quarterback coming in, building a legacy and winning you 6 Super Bowls. So the love that New England has for this guy is real. Like, I liked Tom Brady before.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a TB12 fan,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I love this guy now, right? You ask a lot of people, he's already in the conversation as some of the greatest franchise players of all time, simply because of what he was able to do in a year with this team. So it's like, I think that was the coolest part of it. Just, for New England fans to see him come back in another uniform and kind of get, I don't know about closure, but just kind of, see him in person back in their stadium again. And then obviously on the other side of the spectrum, for Tom to go out there and win, I'm sure that meant a lot to him. But there was a lot of emotions surrounding that game. Like, that was all you heard the week leading up to it, was Brady and Belichick, and the fans are going to be a mess. It's going to be a rough week for New England fans. Obviously wish the game was a little higher scoring and it wasn't so much of a slop fest, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it almost was kind of like a movie, because all the elements were there. Obviously he was able to come through. Mac Jones looked good as well, but he's got a lot of time. But Tom Brady, obviously has a lot left in the tank. Is this what you expected when he signed? I mean, were you super excited, or what was your feeling when he first signed?
I'll tell you. I can only speak for myself, because believe it or not, there's a lot of people who still talk about our old quarterback a lot.
Really? Like an
Yeah,
X,
man.
like an X, yeah.
Exactly. An X that they can't get over. So a lot of people were really upset by the Tom Brady move. I can think of a couple already. I was cautiously optimistic, because, you have to look at the facts, and that this guy is pushing, 45 years old. I think he was 42 when he signed with the Bucks, or 43. But, that was kind of a concern. But at the same time, it's Tom Brady. It's the winningest player in NFL history. It's a guy who has all of these Super Bowl rings. And when you look at the Buccaneers on paper, they had the roster, for a guy like Tom Brady to come in and thrive, because at the quarterback position for Tampa Bay, we didn't need a next level quarterback. You just needed somebody who didn't turn the ball over 30 times a year. Somebody who is able to make smart decisions, and somebody who ultimately the franchise felt could win them a Super Bowl. So when you ask yourself the question, can Jameis Winston win us a Super Bowl? First year in Bruce Arians' offense, he throws 30 picks. Obviously, it's been talked about. Guys like Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Carson Palmer, all of their picks go up the first year in a Bruce Arians offense. But for Jameis, Jameis was already pushing the end of his contract, and the Bucs don't really want to sit around and wait to see what's going to happen. With Tom Brady being behind door number 2, as Bruce Arians puts it, the decision seemed somewhat easy. You take the experienced veteran, you take the guy who has been there before. So I was excited for Tom Brady to come in, because we needed a game manager. We needed a guy who can win you those games and not turn the ball over on the game-winning drive. But I didn't expect him to come in and play the way that he has been. I really did not. We joked at the beginning of the podcast about how he can't keep up in today's NFL. I'm pretty sure he's top 2 in touchdowns right now and leading the league in passing yards.
He is.
And, without those 2 bullshit interceptions in week 1, I don't know how, I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast.
Yeah, you go ahead.
But, regardless of those 2 picks in week 1, you take those away, this guy has no picks on the season. So it's just insane to me that, 1, he's my quarterback, because I never ever thought it would be cool to be a Tampa fan. And 2, he's actually able to keep up with these guys. And, the plethora of riches on the Bucs offense is really making it easy for him. And it's all you can ask for, right?
Absolutely. And so obviously he brought along Gronk as well. What were your thoughts? You get Brady, that's one thing. Then, Gronk comes back. What was your thought on that, if that would even work?
I wasn't too psyched about the Gronk signing at first. When it first happened, I was like, oh, here we go. Just because you've got OJ Howard, who at this point a lot of people are already moving on from, but that's a first-round draft pick for Tampa Bay that's kind of yet to really end up the way that you wanted him to. I'm a big Cam Brate fan. He's been our guy for years. He's been the tight end 1 on this roster for a very long time. Good, reliable red zone target. And you just thought about Rob Gronkowski having to get back into football shape, what that's going to look like, how long it's going to take on a brand new team, staying healthy, because injuries are why he retired in the first place. But Gronk has also been pleasantly surprising. It took him a few weeks early last season to really get going. I think the first breakout you saw from him was against the Packers, and that was, it was week 5 or 6 that they played Green Bay. But as the season started to go on, clearly he's, big, goofy Gronk. He's never going to look super athletic, but you started to see him get back into shape, and you started to see him just play the way that he did before. And then coming into this season, he doesn't look, obviously he's hurt right now, but coming into the season and watching him at camp, he didn't look as goofy and out of place. He looked more in shape. So staying healthy for him down the stretch is going to be big, especially already missing a game due to the injury. But I'm excited to see what he can do, man, because clearly Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski still have plenty of gas left in the tank. But health being a factor for both of them, I'm really surprised at what they've been able to bring to this offense production wise. You knew Gronk was going to be a reliable tight end target, but I mean, he's out here just eating people up every now and again, and that's pretty cool to see.
It's so interesting. You have the players that are kind of the security blanket for a quarterback, and Gronk is more than just that. I mean, you even see that in Green Bay, where Aaron Rodgers wanted to bring back Randall Cobb. He's made him relevant again.
Right.
He was that security blanket, and Brady and Gronk, they have that connection that really, I mean, they mutually are able to succeed, and Brady gets the best out of Gronk.
Oh yeah. Brady knows how to get the best out of his guys. That was another thing coming into not this season, but last season too. When you bring Tom Brady in, this is a guy who knows how to get the best out of your players. Not saying that another quarterback like a Jameis Winston couldn't really do that, because this entire roster has nothing but good things to say about the guy. But when
which
your
is
pregame speech goes viral because you're eating W's and then you go
yes.
out there and get your ass kicked, it's not going to win everybody over. But having a guy like Tom Brady, it doesn't even have to be said. Like, he's not a rah-rah guy. He's not he's not a pregame yelling in the pile, getting everybody's attention kind of guy. So when he does speak up, people listen, man. And it's just that standard of excellence, I think, that, has definitely rubbed off from his time in New England for having to do that so long, to be buttoned up and make sure you're at your best level at all times, even if you're hurt. Because we've heard about a lot of these guys playing through injury. Like, he, as a quarterback, knows how to get the most out of his teammates and just take everybody to another level. And that's without a doubt what we've seen on this roster.
And speaking of that, going to the Bucs, it's a different atmosphere. Bruce Arians it's not the Patriot way. It's a little bit looser. How has he gotten even more out of Tom Brady?
I think it's just that freedom, to kind of sit back every now and again and just let him do what he needs to do. Like, at this point, I think it's safe to say most head coaches can trust a guy with 7 Super Bowl titles and, just the amount of winning that he has done, how good he is at his job, how football smart he is. So between the conversations that they've had, whether it be breaking down film or just bullshitting between practice, he trusts this guy a lot. But it's that freedom to take a step back, allow him to do what he needs to do, or just giving him the option if he wants it. You've seen so many times. There was one time last year in the playoffs. I can't remember what game it was. I think it might have been the Green Bay game or the Washington game. I know there's a gap there, but it was one of those two games. But, there's been a couple of times where Brady's gone, looked at the play call, and then he looks to the sideline and he's like, I'm not running that play. I'm going to go ahead and run this play. And then that play ends up being a 30-yard touchdown,
Right,
So
right.
the level of trust that these guys have and the level of football knowledge between all of them allows it to be a little bit more of a lax environment. Bruce Arians has said before too, not only with, how he's going to call the game or the play call at the time being, but just everyday practice. He's not really going to force these guys to be out there. Like, he's made it clear that if Gronk calls him up or Tom calls him up and just says, hey, not today, he's not going to make them go out there. But that freedom of, not only being able to just do what you need to do in that time being, but the open communication line between everybody involved, I think it's a great atmosphere for Tom. And that's why we're getting such a fun look at the guy. Because like he said in his press conference, he just doesn't really care anymore. He's at the stage in his career where, like, what does he need to be buttoned up for?
Right. Well, and you talked about kind of a fun look and communication. What's the deal with the Darth Vader-esque communication that Bruce Arians always wears on his chest? I always wondered why he does it that way.
Which, what do you mean? Is it like a big?
Yeah, like he'll
Like
wear that, and he's like the only one that has that. You see him on the sideline. It's interesting the way he does that.
I'll be honest with you, I've never noticed.
You have to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no clue. I mean, maybe what is it, like a big audio mixer on his
Yeah,
chest?
yeah,
He's got a
yeah.
bunch of dials and knobs and
Looks like
stuff.
he's gonna be like a disc jockey there.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I've never noticed that, but who knows, man? Who knows?
And say, like, between him and is it Byron Leftwich is still there as well?
Yep.
I've heard him, float around as a potential head coach somewhere. He's really gotten a lot out of Brady as well.
Oh yeah. I think people are, really quick to point the finger at a bad offensive game plan or just a bad offensive game, or a bad offensive play call at the time being. And they're really quick to point the finger at Byron Leftwich and kind of make him the scapegoat of this coaching staff. But I think Byron's done a fine job with this offense. Coming into things, when he got hired way back in 2019, Bruce Arians said he's not calling the plays anymore. Byron Leftwich is calling the plays. And I think looking at the production of this offense, he's done a fine job. Now, obviously, a lot of Bucs fans are going to nitpick because there's certain things in his playbook that not everybody likes. The guaranteed run on first down, which the Bucs have gotten better at play action this year, which was something they struggled with in 2020, and that was pissing a lot of people off because,
Right.
Tom Brady, that's his bread and butter is play action. So incorporating that a little bit more has been working. The run game actually being somewhat productive this year is working. Leonard Fournette's been a stud in the early going, but I really like Byron Leftwich, and I
Yeah,
think there is a legitimate case for him to be a head coach option here within the next few years.
absolutely. And you talked about Leonard Fournette. He's been the guy. What's going on with Ronald Jones? I mean, he was supposed to be the guy, but Fournette has kind of. I mean, has that been a good 1-2 punch there?
I mean, I think so. Coming into the year, myself and 95% of other people agreed that Ronald Jones was probably the best running back on this roster. Just as a pure like runner, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
neither Lenny nor Rojo can really catch the ball out of the backfield. Although Leonard Fournette's been proving me wrong these
He's
past few
getting
weeks,
better
and
at that.
he's definitely won me over.
Hmm.
But it seemed like Ronald Jones was ready to take that step. He was cut short of 1,000-yard season last year because he had the finger injury towards the end of the year, and then I think he ended up getting COVID too, which was just
Hmm.
a 1-2 punch that wasn't good. Um, Leonard Fournette stepped up in the playoffs the way that he did, but I thought Rojo was going to take this job and run with it. And so far, between the carries that they have both gotten, Leonard Fournette looks like he's just meant to be there for right now. Bruce Arians has not shied away from the running back rotation, so I'm sure there's going to come a point in the season where Lenny maybe slows down a little bit, and then the discussion starts to heat up about Ronald Jones. But I hope he gets it together. I'm a big Rojo fan. But this is his last year under contract with Tampa
It
Bay.
is.
So, if he doesn't really do amazing down the stretch, it wouldn't surprise me if the Bucs want to hang on to a Leonard Fournette over a Ronald Jones, because all three of their running backs, Gio Bernard, Ronald Jones, and Leonard Fournette, are free agents at the end of the year. So
Oh wow.
you're
Yeah.
going to have to pick one or two of those guys. I don't think all
Hmm.
three of them will be back in Tampa Bay next season. So it'll be critical for him down the stretch. But as of right now, man, this running back one spot is Leonard Fournette's to lose.
Yeah, and he's been obviously like in the Super Bowl. He's been doing well with it,
Oh yeah.
and on a Super Bowl contender, it's good to have that 1-2 punch. And also, when you talk about offensive, fireworks. I mean, receivers. It's really. I mean, you have Gronk. We talked about Gronk, but between Mike Evans, Godwin, and Antonio Brown, and even some of the others, like, is there a weakness here?
No way, man.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part about this offense, because, they played Miami this week. They crushed them 45-17. And I mean, it's Miami and they're missing Tua, but the way that this offense is just able to just go, it's crazy to me that the Bucs are really one of those teams where in the NFL, you're not really going to out talent a lot of teams, and the
Hmm.
Bucs aren't going to get away with it against good football teams. Like they couldn't get away with it against the Rams, right? Down
Right.
the stretch, I don't know if they're going to be able to get away with it against teams like Buffalo. But they're without a doubt able to do that on offense. Like if you go into a game against Miami, it could be not a good day for the Bucs, but they're still going to win by 20, right? Like it's
Hmm.
one of those things where it's embarrassing the amount of firepower that they have on offense. But coming into the game this week, you're missing Rob Gronkowski. He's already down. The tight ends didn't have a huge day, but just the fact that either one of Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, or Mike Evans could just have a 100-yard day. You know what I mean? Either one of those guys could really be that guy. And all of them got their targets last Sunday, but it's it's a position the Bucs have always been strong at, but
Hmm.
this is probably going to go down in franchise history as the best room of all time between Antonio Brown, who took a year and a half hiatus from the NFL and still is the fastest player to reach 900 receptions after last week.
Wow. Yeah.
Mike Evans, who has yet to not have a 1,000-yard season, and I hope that given the Bucs having a little bit more success, he can start to get the respect that he deserves. And Chris Godwin, who's a stud, man. Chris Godwin's a wide receiver one on any
Hmm.
team in the NFL. So it's a great position to be in. It definitely is. It definitely is a good spot to be in as far as firepower at wide receiver goes. You got Scotty Miller, who is hurt, but as much as I like Scotty, he serves a purpose. He
Hmm.
is kind of a one-trick pony. We call him on the podcast because he
Yeah.
just, he runs fast straight, and he's going to beat you 9 times out of 10 if you're playing a single high safety. So,
So he's
you know,
Forrest
he
Gump.
Right. He's nice to have. Tyler Johnson, who we saw a little bit this last week, he's a recent Bucks draft pick who
Out of
I
Minnesota.
yeah, I think next season is going to be his time to shine because I
Okay.
don't know what the wide receiver room is going to look like after next season. Antonio Brown, obviously, on a 1-year deal. Chris Godwin has to negotiate this season. Mike Evans is locked down, so he's going to be here no matter what. But
Okay.
if you lose either Antonio Brown or Chris Godwin, which obviously the Bucks don't want to happen, but if it happens, I'm confident in a guy like Tyler Johnson. He's looked really good. So just the level of depth there is probably the best on the entire roster for the Bucks.
Have you noticed when Gronk is down, if any other receivers like Antonio Brown will be favored a little bit more, or is there any type of trend that way?
I think Brady loves AB.
Oh, yeah.
I think AB is probably that guy that's going to get your targets, but at the end of the day, Tom Brady is going to throw it to the guy who's open.
Hmm.
So I don't really spend too much time thinking about, who's getting favored as far as targets go, because as of right now, all three of the Bucks receivers, Godwin, AB, and Big Mike, they're over 300 yards, which means realistically, they are on pace to all have 1,000 yards, which is just bonkers. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both had 1,000 yards a couple of seasons ago with Jameis, but the Bucks were playing losing football, and a lot of those yards were garbage time stats. So, just going back and speaking on the level of production on this offense, as long as it equates to wins, I don't care, and the guys on the team don't care if they have a catch that night. Like
Right.
I can forego my fantasy team for the week as long as we can beat New Orleans because like fuck the Saints.
Right.
Um, but
Is that because Jameis went there, or are you just
oh
saying
no,
that?
it was way before him, but
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
definitely did not make it any easier. Like I was a
yeah,
I hate to be the guy who has to talk about the X now, but I was a really big
yeah.
Jameis fan, and I was a Jameis Winston apologist for a long time.
Yeah,
And then he signed with fucking New Orleans, man. Like,
yeah, yeah.
like not only did he leave it in the division,
Right.
but to sign with the smelly ass New Orleans Saints, I hate that city. I hate their fans. I hate their team. I hated Drew Brees for a long time, because I mean, he's just really good at football, and I hated playing him twice a year. I hate Taysom Hill. I hate their whole roster.
This is
Like it
probably
just it's
this.
it's a beef between Tampa and New Orleans that's been happening for a long time, and people notice now because the Bucks are actually relevant. But I just I hate that team.
This is probably a bad time to tell you that actually this episode is sponsored by Mardi Gras. So,
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Great to hear that.
so going back obviously to the pass rush and everything, the offense wise, I'm an Iowa guy, so I have to bring up Tristan Wirfs. What has he meant last year as a rookie, and even this year to Tom Brady and then the whole offense?
Tristan Wirfs has been just a blessing, man. Stability on this offensive line has been building slowly but surely these past
Mhm.
few years. They got Ryan Jensen all those years ago, but at the right tackle position for the longest time, we had DeMar Dotson. And his last season here, which was 2019, it was he was a very serviceable lineman. He was one of the longest tenured Bucks on the roster when they let him go. But watching his game film back that year, he was just, you could tell the age was getting to him. And there were some pass rushers where like they would overpower him and they
Mhm.
would literally break the man down. Like he would fall over because he could not hold them up. At that point, you're just a liability. And bringing in
Mhm.
a guy like Tom Brady, who isn't as elusive in the pocket as, number 3 was, that's even more of a reason to bolster up your line. But Tristan Wirfs has just been an absolute stud. Yet to give up a sack. It has been a little over a year, like a year and a week since he's given up a sack.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, just the way that offensive line, the entire unit has come together. Donovan Smith, since Brady has been here, has stepped his game up because a lot of people thought left tackle was a bigger need than right tackle after 2019 because Donovan Smith has not been very consistent. But I will
Mhm.
say that even when he is average, he is better than a lot of left tackles in the NFL. Bucks fans might not want to hear that, but that's just the way that it is. But he has stepped his game up. But yeah, dude, Tristan Wirfs, I'm a huge fan of that guy. And because he's in ugly position, because he's a right tackle and an offensive lineman, he won't get the props that he deserves. But he is shaping up to be one of the best draft picks in this franchise in a pretty long time. And I mean, they've got a pretty good track record recently too.
And eventually, would they move him over to the left in a few
I don't
years? Or
know. I
yeah,
I don't know. I guess it just depends on, how they evaluate that position after D Smith is gone. I don't know what that timetable is because he just got paid. So it's like he's going to be here the next couple of seasons, at least through Tristan Wirfs' rookie contract. I think he'd probably play here. But that's a tough transition for a guy. I know Tristan, he kind of played all over the line at Iowa, didn't he? He,
he
he
did.
played a
Yeah,
couple of different spots. He played the left side his freshman and sophomore year, I think. Um, but once you're in the NFL, that's a tough transition. So I don't know personally. It'd be interesting to see because right tackle is just way different than left tackle. But
mm-hmm.
I'm totally cool with leaving him there. At the end of the day, this staff is going to know what's best, and whatever they do, I can't control it. So maybe down the line, when
Right.
they have to reevaluate some things, we could try moving him around. But for right now, I think he's locked at right tackle. It's a great fit for him.
Absolutely. And speak of kind of evaluating players and drafts and things like that, the Bucks have really done well in the draft with their defensive players between Devin White and talking a little bit about some of those key players and what they've meant to the defense.
Yeah, man. I think one that probably goes back the farthest here as far as the recent defensive draft picks is Vita Vea. A pretty underwhelming pick for a lot of people that season, not only because he, had a couple of injuries, he couldn't shake his first few seasons, but people just didn't think defensive tackle was more of a need than something in the secondary like safety. People always brought up Derwin James, how the Bucks could have got Derwin James. Derwin James was this guy. He could do this, this, and this, yada, yada, yada. And then 3 years later, everybody's calling Vita Vea the best nose tackle in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Vita Vea is the heart and soul of that defensive line. And when he is on, that pass rush is on.
And you
He's
can't even
able to
run
just,
against them either. So,
oh man,
yeah,
Polynesian power is my nickname for him because
love
he
it.
just moves linemen two at a time. It's grown man strength out there, and he's able to just make all these other opportunities for guys who aren't going to be that great against the one-on-one to get back there and get after the quarterback. So Vita Vea is obviously a really, really big one. I'm a big fan. I always like drafting fat guys, and he's one of my favorite. Devin White has really stepped up. I'd like to see him improve down the stretch this year. He's been somewhat quiet with Levante David, not really, sure what his status is going to be Thursday night against Philly. Hopefully he'll be able to step up. But Devin White's been a stud. He was great last year. A lot of people think that he is on pace to be a defensive player of the year guy. A little bit of a slow start for him this year, so he'll have some ground to catch up on. But, he's been a great draft pick for this team. Antoine Winfield Jr., the second round draft pick. I know he's in concussion protocol right now, but just another guy where, like Tristan Wirfs, they didn't look like rookies their rookie year.
Right.
You put them out there and they didn't really look lost. They didn't look like they didn't know what they were doing. So Winfield has been great. He obviously gave us one of the, greatest moments in franchise history with the deuces at the Super Bowl. That's going to live on in infamy for Buccaneers lore until the end of time. So a lot of what they've been able to do is really starting to take shape. People were upset because they drafted a lot of their secondary guys, and people were like, listen, why do we keep drafting in the secondary? None of these guys are really that good. But after the wheels get rolling and you get 2, 3, 4 seasons in with some of these guys, we've seen the level that they're playing at. Carlton Davis took him like 2 years to learn how to, go out there and intercept passes. But ever since he's hit that point, he's kind of gotten over the hump of being a corner in the NFL. He has been outstanding. He's been hurt this year, but he's been great. Jamel Dean hasn't had the greatest year, but hopefully with Richard Sherman being in there, he can pick up a few things from him. I'd like to see him develop as far as the season goes. He did get a pick last week, though, and that was always great. He had the pick 6 against Aaron Rodgers early in the season 2020. Sean Murphy-Bunting was a stud. He is also currently hurt as we talk about the injuries on this team. But, SMB was an absolute warrior in the playoffs last year, had picks in all those games. So the draft defensively is really starting to come together. And when people talk about how the Bucks, bought their team or Brady brought these guys here, whatever, man, I don't want to hear it. The
Yeah.
draft picks have been, have been out of the park. And for a guy like Jason Light, who had a rough first couple of years, that 2016 draft class will live on in infamy because none of them are on the roster anymore. But they've really cleaned it up these past few seasons, and I think a lot of people are happy with what they've put together.
And kind of think about next year. What are some of those needs? Are they going to have to shore up more of the secondary, or obviously injuries play a factor? But what do you see as some needs going forward?
I think early on for the Bucs, to be honest, it's going to be an offensive draft next year. I think their first round is either going to be a receiver or a running back.
Mm-hmm.
Just solely based on what could happen at those positions. If you're able to re-sign everybody you want in the wide receiver room and you're comfortable with it, okay, maybe not round one, but potentially losing Gio Bernard, Leonard Fournette, and or Ronald Jones, I don't know how many of those guys they're going to keep. And, do you want to roll the dice on a rookie running back who can be a 3-down guy, who can catch the ball out of the backfield and take carries and pick up blocks? But I think it's going to be an offensive draft. Those are the positions that I'm kind of leaning towards.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the defensive side of the ball, it couldn't hurt to get some more defensive line help. At defensive tackle, it'd be nice to get a little bit younger. We just lost Khalil Davis. I think he signed with either the Packers or the Colts recently, but he was a late round draft pick for Tampa Bay last year. And he ended up getting picked up by somebody else for their practice squad, but he was starting to develop this season over camp. There were a lot of good things said about him, but that was your youngest guy. So getting just a little bit more youth on that defensive line would be nice, even if it's another pass rusher. JPP is over 30.
Mm-hmm.
I know Shaq just got paid and you got Joe Tryon, but it's still always nice to have just a little bit more of a reserve there. So I look at either the defensive line or the fun picks, the wide receiver or the running back potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the draft, they're probably going to have a pretty late pick in the first round. Are you thinking that this team does have another, Super Bowl run in them? They're favorites right now, but do they have that for the long term for this year?
I think they do without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's going to depend on how they play down the stretch. Every year is different. It's incredibly hard to repeat in the NFL. That's why nobody ever does it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a league like the NBA where you have champions 2 to 3 times, within 4 years, unless it's the Patriots these past 20.
Right.
So
With
doing
Tom
that is
Brady,
difficult.
yeah.
Right. Well, there's the X factor, man. Is
Mm-hmm.
it's with him playing at the level that he is in 2020. I wasn't one of those fans who automatically assumed we would get to the Super Bowl. Like when you get to the playoffs, it's a different beast. And the fact of the matter was the Bucs had all this talent, but everybody's still kind of learning. It's a new system for your quarterback, even though your quarterback is Tom Brady. It's still a new system for him. He still has things to learn. He still has chemistry to get down with his receivers. He's never played with Mike Evans before. He's never played with Chris Godwin. He's never thrown passes to OJ Howard or Cameron Braid or, thrown to Ronald Jones out of the backfield who bobbles the ball into the air and then it's a pick six into the other end zone, because that's usually what happens when you throw our running backs the ball. I digress. I'm getting carried away here. Sorry.
But I thought it was pretty cool, pretty telling at the beginning, through the pandemic where he was trying to get everyone together and obviously just out at a park or random park, how he was trying to do that. So obviously he wanted to win, and that's cool about him, that he wants this. At that age, he already is considered the GOAT, and he just keeps getting better, and that's cool to see that leadership. And I'm not even a Bucks fan, but it's cool to see. And I do want to challenge one thing that you said early on. You said it's first time it's been cool to be a Bucks fan. I would challenge that, and I would say it was cool to be a Bucks fan for the first time when they got those pewter uniforms.
Yeah, back in the 90s, Tony Dungy, pewter power days.
But offensively, you really haven't had that, because you had Brad Johnson quarterback and
right, Sean King.
Yes,
that Tony Dungy offense couldn't really get it done. And I will agree that the defensive just powerhouse that the Bucs were from 96, 97 all the way up until their first Super Bowl. That defense is legendary, one of the all-time greatest. But those Tony Dungy teams, their offense couldn't get it done. And that's why they brought in the guy who's been in the news recently, who was able to get it done in his first year with a new and improved offense that was able to produce just a little bit more. A lot of Bucs fans will tell you about the 1999 NFC Championship game against the Rams. I don't know if you've heard that story, but the Burt Emmanuel catch, they held the Rams to not that great of a day, but like they barely scored any points too. So it was, it was about finding something that could work offensively. But like you said, they have never had this, this firepower on offense in the history of the franchise. They have had some all-time great defenses, but nothing like this on the offensive side of the ball.
When the chips are down, who are the challengers really? The Rams did beat them regular season, but when the chips are down, might be some of the challengers on the NFC side?
The Rams are the first team I look at, man. When we talked about playoff matchups for the Bucs last season, I didn't want to play the Rams in the playoffs because even though they had Jared Goff, it's just not that great of a matchup. The Rams, Sean McVay, they have really found a way to just neutralize the Bucs on offense. And obviously the game against the Rams was a lot of early mistakes for Tampa Bay, but slowing this team down on offense and doing what you can against their defense, which is tough to do, but the short passing game and having receivers like Cooper Kupp is definitely going to tear these guys to shreds. They've done a really good job, and they just match up really well with this team. So the Rams are, the one team that I look at because I think the Bucs can beat just about anybody on any given Sunday, right? That's kind of, any given Sunday. They can beat the Saints again. I think they can beat Aaron Rodgers again.
Oh, yeah.
But I worry about the Rams, especially now that they have a pretty damn good quarterback.
Agreed. I mean, you have the Cardinals sitting there, but do you really trust Cliff Kingsbury when, to out coach Tom Brady and Bruce Arians? I don't think so. But, Sean McVay obviously has done that with Brady in the Super Bowl, and he has competed against him and done well. So I like that. I agree. I think the Rams are probably that team that could really be the only one that be their challenger.
Oh yeah, I think so. They scare me. They do. You brought up Arizona, and I mean, in the playoffs, I just, Kyler Murray still has to kind of get his feet wet in the postseason. A lot of the guys on that roster do, and they do have some veteran presence. And I remember Chandler Jones. What was it? Week 1, he had like 5 sacks. He went insane. But getting all of those guys together and really making sure they can carry that momentum throughout the playoffs is going to be interesting. I'm still curious to see how they finish down the stretch because that's a really competitive division that they're in. But, if they can make it work, that's another team that could be a problem. The Bucs struggle against scrambling quarterbacks. So, the Cardinals could be up there, but I'm curious to see how they play down the stretch. But, as far as the biggest contender in the NFC, I think without a doubt it's the Rams.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. I definitely appreciate your time. And so they can catch you at Redicus on Twitter, on Instagram, and Cannon Fire Pod.
Yep. Cannon Fire Pod on Twitter, Cannon Fire Podcast on Instagram. And if you guys ever want to check out the podcast, if you're into the Buck stuff, anywhere you download a podcast, we can be found. And then we also do video on YouTube, and we do more than just the podcast. We do some other series as well. So make sure you guys go check that channel out.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And we'll have to check in later on the season too. So
for sure, man. It was great talking to you. I'm glad I was able to jump on here and talk some Bucs ball. I'm always down for that.
Thanks again.
Yes, sir.